The rain was relentless that night, cold, merciless, and heavy enough to wash the color out of the world. Through the storm, a lone figure stumbled down the road, a woman, soaked to the bone, clutching her swollen belly with trembling hands. Her name was Marissa. 8 months pregnant, barefoot, and bleeding from a cut on her lip, she had been running for miles through back roads and darkness, escaping something, or someone, that terrified her more than anything ever had. She didn't know where she was headed. All she knew was that she had to keep moving, that her baby had to live. Then, through the sheets of rain, she saw a faint flicker of neon light. The Devil's Disciples Bar. The name alone might have scared most people away, but Marissa was out of options. Her knees nearly gave out as she pushed open the heavy door. The room fell silent. About a dozen men turned to stare, leather jackets, tattoos, heavy boots, and the thick smell of beer and oil filled the air. She looked like she had stepped out of another world and into the lion's den. Her hair stuck to her face, her torn cardigan clung to her trembling frame, and her eyes, full of desperation, met those of a large man with a gray beard, his arms covered in ink. His vest marked President. Her lips quivered as she whispered, "Please, I need help." Then, with the faintest breath, she added, "If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that even the hardest hearts can still do the right thing, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner, because this story is one you won't forget." The man she had spoken to was Reed, a biker who had seen more pain than most men could endure. He had buried his brother, lost his family, and carried guilt that he never talked about. For years, he'd been trying to rebuild his club's reputation, turning it from a name feared on the streets into one that stood for loyalty instead of chaos. But when Marissa walked in that night, drenched and shaking, he wasn't thinking about redemption. He was thinking about what kind of trouble had just found its way to his door. Marissa could barely stand. She fell to her knees on the cold tile floor, her hands clasped as if in prayer. "Please," she whispered, "someone's after me." "He said he'd kill me if I left. I just need to make it through tonight." The men exchanged uneasy looks. A pregnant woman, broken and terrified, asking a gang of bikers for help. It was the kind of story no one wanted to be part of. But Reed couldn't look away. There was something in her eyes, a kind of pain he recognized. He knelt down and saw the bruises on her wrists. She had been hurt badly. Without hesitation, he ordered his men, "Nobody touches her. Nobody questions her. She stays here tonight." And with that, he made a decision that would change all of their lives. They took her to a booth in the back, wrapped her in a towel, gave her water, and listened as she tried to speak through trembling lips. Her voice was small and fragile as she told them about Carl, her husband, a man who had once promised love but turned her life into a nightmare. When she became pregnant, he grew more violent, more dangerous. That night, after he threw her against the wall for saying she was leaving, she ran, without shoes, without a plan, driven only by hope. The bikers listened in silence. One of the younger men, Tanner, found her dry clothes from the storage room. Someone else brought warm food and a handmade blanket. When she whispered, "Thank you," through tears, none of them knew how to respond. They hadn't heard those words, spoken like that, in years. As the night stretched on, Reed sat outside the office where Marissa rested, a beer in his hand and his thoughts far away. He thought about his daughter, the one he hadn't seen in a decade, and how she used to cling to his arm when she was small. He thought about how many times he'd chosen his bike over her, and he thought about how life sometimes gives you rare, sacred moments to do the right thing, even when the world sees you as the villain. Just before dawn, headlights flashed through the rain outside. A truck screeched to a stop. Reed stood, his jaw tightening. "Stay with her," he told his men. The door burst open and a large man stormed in, soaked and wild-eyed. "Where is she?" he bellowed. "Where's my wife?" The bikers surrounded him in silence. Reed stepped forward. "You need to leave." The man's face twisted with rage. "She's mine," he shouted. "You hear me? Mine." He lunged toward the office, but Tanner and two others held him back. The room erupted, a storm inside a storm. Reed stared him down, his voice low and steady. "Not anymore," he said. "You lost that right when you laid your hands on her." Moments later, the police, called quietly by one of the men, arrived and took Carl away. Marissa, trembling, had heard everything from behind the door. When she finally stepped out, she saw Reed sitting alone at a table, head bowed, rain still dripping from his jacket. She walked over, tears streaming down her face, and whispered, "You saved my life." Reed looked up, his voice soft, almost breaking. "No, sweetheart. You saved ours. Days passed." Marissa stayed until she found shelter. The bikers fixed her car, gave her money, and promised her she'd never have to be afraid again. When she left, she hugged each of them. Men once feared, now quietly fighting back tears. Reed walked her to the door and placed a folded piece of paper in her hand, an address. "In case you ever need help again," he said. Months later, a letter arrived at the bar. Inside was a photo, a newborn baby boy wrapped in a blue blanket. On the back, in soft handwriting, it said, "His name is Hope, because that's what you gave us." The men stood around the bar that night in silence. Some smiled. Some wiped their eyes. Reed held the photo the longest, his rough fingers trembling. Maybe life hadn't given him a second chance with his own daughter, but somehow, helping Marissa had healed something inside him he didn't even know was broken. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Because kindness doesn't come from perfection. It comes from courage, compassion, and the choice to care.